Knight is the end of the Arkham series, but Rocksteady will continue to make games, and hopefully still with DC properties, and also hopefully a continuation of the Arkhamverse. Keep in mind that as I'm making this, Arkham Knight has not been released, so maybe that game will provide some more information about the possibilities in Rocksteady's future, but the game isn't out yet, so I wouldn't know. As of now, it's unclear if Rocksteady will continue to make games for DC properties, and if they do continue making DC games, they may not be set in the Arkhamverse. If they choose to abandon the Arkhamverse continuity and start anew, then they have many options. They could create completely new gameplay mechanics, or they could keep the combat system in place. They potentially have a lot of freedom with gameplay and story. Most likely the game will be related to an upcoming DC movie, though. If they choose to continue making games in the continuity of the previous Arkham games, then they're probably limited to sticking with the combat system. They don't necessarily need to, but it's a staple feature, so it's sort of expected. They also would have to be aware of the continuity from previous games, but they could just make a new, loosely connected game with a different character and not have to worry about the continuity of the Arkham games. This universe is well liked, and if Rocksteady started from scratch, they would have to redesign characters in the world, which may involve changing the game's tone and aesthetic so that it would be apparent that this game is not set in the Arkhamverse and set itself apart from that. But I would like to see other DC properties handled in the same style and aesthetic as the Arkham games, so it would be a little sad if they leave the Arkhamverse behind. Also, it would be cool to have the Arkhamverse be a shared DC universe, even if the other games are only loosely connected, so it would sort of be like a dark version of Bruce Timm's DC animated universe, but, as a video game. One possibility is a Justice League game. Apparently there's a rumor that one is in development, but I couldn't really find any evidence supporting this rumor, so don't read into it too much yet. I did find an article from Variety that was published in 2012, which started some speculation about a Justice League game. The article states that Arkham Origins has a similar setting to Silver Age comic books, and the writer gave an example of the game being like the time when the Justice League was being formed and its members would team up with Batman. Also, it was saying that WB was trying to expose people to the Justice League by making more Justice League-related media. Then people began to speculate that Origins would aid in featuring the Justice League by maybe showing other heroes and maybe the formation of the Justice League itself. Now, after the release, we know that there are no other superheroes in the flesh in that game, or the formation of the Justice League, but there were plenty of Justice League-related Easter eggs like the Zatanna poster and the Queen Industries crate, but those touches could just add to the world building and lore, so that's no confirmation of a Justice League game. The problem with a Justice League game is that most of the members' power sets wouldn't fit in the free-flow combat system, so they would have to make a different system for different playable members to properly simulate their powers, which would be different from Arkham's combat, and that new combat system could be too different or too unexpected for players. So, most likely, if the game is tied in some way or another to the Arkham series, the playable characters' power sets should be similar to Batman's, so they can be easily implemented into the free-flow combat system. Or Batman could just be the playable character and he would be involved with the Justice League. Looking at the DC film release schedule at around the time when Rocksteady's next game will probably release gives us an idea for what that game may be about. Arkham Asylum and City took about 2 years to be completed, while Arkham Knight has taken about 4 years. Hopefully it won't be another 4 years before Rocksteady's next game will come out, since now they're more experienced with the next-gen consoles. Most likely, Rocksteady will release another game in 2 or 3 years, so the movies releasing around that time could be related to the next game. If they make one game in 2 years, they could get one off around the release for the 2017 Justice League movie or the 2016 Suicide Squad movie. And Warner Brothers is okay with the games not being released at the exact same time as the movies, so a game related to a movie could come out like a year before or after the film's release. Also, it shouldn't be a big deal if they have to recast Batman's voice or use Roger Craig Smith if Kevin Conroy won't return. It shouldn't be a big deal if they have to recast anyone else either. It's not that big of an inconsistency to have different voice actors in the same continuity, and I usually can't tell the difference anyway. The Suicide Squad is another possibility for a game. The game should come out after the film's 2016 release. Suicide Squad references appear in Origins, and they even got an animated movie set in the Arkhamverse. Most Suicide Squad members' power sets would fit well with the free-flow combat system as well, like Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, and Deathstroke, who's not in the movie, but, he still can be put in the game. And with Arkham Knight's dual switching, putting that in a Suicide Squad game would make team gameplay more interesting by, switching between squad members. I personally really like the Suicide Squad, so it would be really cool if we could get a Rocksteady Suicide Squad game. A Green Arrow game would also make sense regarding gameplay. Green Arrow has similar powers to Batman, but you could also add a bit more of a first-person shooter element to it with his archery. Shadow of Mordor had a similar mechanic where you could go into slow-motion first-person shooter mode to aim and fire arrows, so they might be able to do something like that. But I don't know if the popularity of that show is enough to constitute making a game, or if the audience of Arrow would even buy a Green Arrow video game. They could make a game with a Batman side character like Catwoman or Robin or Red Hood. If they did this, then they could still use the Batman title on the game's cover, and then have a subtitle indicating the character that it'll feature, like Batman, Red Hood. Because the Batman name, it sells products. Or they could make a crossover game like Batman and Green Arrow, or, Batman and Robin. Superman and Wonder Woman games may be able to work with the free-flow combat system. New mechanics would probably be created to comfortably simulate their flight, and destructible environments would be added, like being able to smash through buildings or pick up street lights and wield those as weapons, as a way to simulate their super strength. Also add in other abilities like Wonder Woman's whip and Superman's freeze breath, which could sort of be the equivalent to Batman's gadgets. And the enemies would also have to be stronger than the thugs in the Arkham games in order to actually harm Superman and Wonder Woman. The enemy's strength level should be to a point where they could kill Batman in, at most, a couple of hits. If Rocksteady does continue making DC games, hopefully they'll have a comic book writer or some sort of writer that knows how to handle superhero stories well, because Arkham Asylum, and particularly Arkham City, their stories were tightly written, and they had Paul Dini, who was a writer on Batman the Animated Series. He was writing those. And Origins didn't have as well crafted of a story, and I don't know if they had a quality writer on it. Hopefully for the next game, they'll get a quality writer, because then the game is like playing through a comic book, and that's one of the most enjoyable aspects from Arkham Asylum and City. That's all, so thank you for listening.